Hi friends, as a part of our capacity building activity, in this video we are discussing about behaviorism and the various experiments associated with it.
Behaviorism. The term behaviorism was first coined in 1930. Behaviorism refers to the school of psychology founded by American psychologist John B. Watson based on the belief that behaviors can be measured, trained and changed. Behaviorism was established with the publication of Watson's classic paper, Psychology as the Behaviorist View It. He saw psychology as study of people's actions with the ability to predict and control those actions. This idea became the behaviorist theory. Behaviorism, also known as behavioral psychology, is a theory of learning which states all behaviors are learned through interaction with the environment through a process called conditioning. Thus, behavior is simply a response to environmental stimuli. Behaviorism is the theory that human or animal psychology can be objectively studied through observable actions rather than thoughts and feelings that cannot be observed. The goal of behaviorism is to explain relationship between antecedent conditions, that is stimuli, behavior, that is responses, and consequences, that is reward or punishment. Mainly, there are two types of behaviorism. They are methodological behaviorism and radical behaviorism. The main behaviorists are John B. Watson, Ivan Pavlov, B.F. Skinner, etc. Watson's work was based on the experiments of Ivan Pavlov, who had studied animals' responses to condition.
Classical conditioning. It is simply a type of learning in which one learns to link two or more stimuli and anticipate events. It was first studied in detail by the Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov, who conducted experiments with dogs and published his findings in 1897. In his experiments, he attached a tube to the salivary gland of a dog, which allowed him to measure the amount of salivation occurred. He then rang a bell, and just a few seconds later, he presented the dog with food. This pairing was carefully planned so that the same period of time elapsed between the presentation of sound and food and occurred repeatedly. At first, the dog would salivate only when the food was presented, but soon the dog began to salivate at the sound of the bell. In fact, even when Pavlov stopped presenting food, the dog would still salivate at the sound of the bell. It now has been classically conditioned to salivate to the sound of bell. What he learned from dog was later translated into classrooms and education for students. The premise being, if animals can learn these conditions or can be conditioned, then children can be conditioned too. Pavlov's experiment was later on extended by John B. Watson in his demonstration of the Little Albert experiment, which is an empirical evidence of classical conditioning in humans. This study also provides an example of stimulus generalization. In Watson's experiment, a 9-month-old little baby, Albert, was used to be conditioned. First off, Watson presented little Albert objects that he was not afraid of, objects that Albert initially liked. These included fire, monkey, dog, rat, etc. In the next stage, a white laboratory rat was placed near Albert and he was allowed to play with it. At this moment, Watson made a loud sound behind Albert's back by striking a suspended steel bar with a hammer each time the baby catched the rat. Albert responded to the noise by crying and showing fear. After several such pairings of the two stimuli, Albert was presented with only the rat. Upon seeing the rat, Albert got very distressed, crying and crawling away. Apparently, the infant associated the white rat with the noise. The rat, originally a neutral stimulus, had become a conditioned stimulus and it was eliciting an emotional response, that is, conditioned response. From the previous experience from the white rat, little Albert suddenly became afraid of familiar objects that had the same characteristics as the white rat. Little Albert seemed to generalize his response to the white rat and became distressed at the sight of several other furry objects such as a rabbit, monkey, fluffy clothes, and even to the Santa Claus mask. Watson concluded that phobias were most likely conditioned responses. The Little Albert experiment is extremely important in psychology and other disciplines. It has inspired other important researchers of the past and continues to impact the direction of psychological investigations today.
Trial and error theory of learning. Trial and error is a method of learning in which different responses are tried for a problem, of which some are rejected until a solution is obtained. Edward Lee Thorndike was the chief exponent of the theory of trial and error. He was an American psychologist who conducted stimulus-response theory experiment with the help of animals. Thorndike says that learning is the process of building connection between a particular stimulus and a response. This connection can be strengthened through trial and error method. Thorndike formulated his theory based on his experiment conducted on cats. Thorndike put a hungry cat in a puzzle box and food was kept outside. The box could be opened by pulling a string hanging inside the box. The cat was tried to come out of the box by squeezing, jumping, beating, etc. Eventually, the cat accidentally pulled the string and finally escaped from the box. This process was continued several times. On the subsequent trials, cat took less time to open the door and committed less number of mistakes. Thorndike concluded that it was only after many random trials that the cat was able to hit upon these solutions. He named it as trial and error learning. An analysis of the learning behavior of the cat in the box shows that, besides trial and error, the principle of goal, motivation, explanation, and reinforcement are involved in the process of learning by trial and error.
Operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is a method of learning that occurs through rewards and punishment to behavior. This way of learning was discovered by B.F. Skinner, the father of operant conditioning. B.F. Skinner presented operant conditioning by carrying out several experiments on animals. He gives a Skinner box created by himself. As the first step of his experiment, he placed a hungry rat inside the Skinner box. The rat was initially inactive inside the box, but gradually, as it began to adapt to the environment of the box, it began to explore around. Eventually, the rat discovered a lever upon pressing which food was released inside the box. After it filled its hunger, it started exploring the box again, and after a while, it pressed the lever for the second time as it grew hungry again. This phenomenon continued for the third, fourth, and fifth, and after a while, the hungry rat immediately pressed the lever once it was placed in the box. Then, the conditioning was deemed to be complete. Here, the action of pressing the lever is an operant response, and the food released inside the chamber is the reward. The experiment is also known as instrumental conditioning learning, as response is instrumental in getting food. The general educational implication of behaviorism. Emphasis on behavior. Students should be active respondent. People are most likely to learn when they actually have a chance to behave. Also, student learning must be evaluated only. Measurable behavior changes can confirm that learning has taken place.